Well, alright guys, what is up? This is Luke back here with yet another album review. Tonight we'll be reviewing Obituary, Slowly We Rot, which is the debut album for Obituary actually, and was released on June 14th, 1989 on Roadrunner Records, and is the only Obituary album to feature bassist Daniel Tucker. Guitarist Alan West would leave soon after, but returned for the third album, The Incomplete. Now this is a very well-known death metal band, and album, I would say old school death metal classic even, being this album is so fucking iconic. Now let's get into the lineup and biography of this band. The lineup on this album consists of John Tardy on vocals, Alan West lead guitar, Trevor Piers on rhythm guitar, Daniel Tucker on bass, and Donald Tardy on drums. Now the band was formed in Tampa, Florida in 1984. They were a fundamental act in the development of death metal, and are one of the most successful death metal bands of all time. I mean, let's be honest. If you haven't heard the name Obituary a few times, are you really a death metal fan? Obituary has released 10 studio albums, with the exception of their 1997-2003 split. They continue to perform live around the world. Initially called Executioner, the band changed their name to Executioner with an X in 1996 to avoid confusion with the thrash metal band Executioner from Boston. And then they changed their name once again to Obituary, and they stuck with it. Obituary has gone through several lineup changes, with the Tardy brothers and Piers being the only consistent members. The band's current lineup consists of vocalist John Tardy, drummer Donald Tardy, rhythm guitarist Trevor Piers, bassist Terry Butler, and lead guitarist Kenny Andrews. Their music is based around heavily groove-based riffs and drumming, along with John Tardy's growling vocals, which creates their signature brand of death metal. Now, without further ado, let's get into this review. First off, we have the track Internal Bleeding, which starts out with somber and slow, and then later picks up with the more thrash-sounding speed and aggression that you hear in a lot of classic old-school death metal. In my opinion, this is a representation of how old-school death metal is supposed to sound like. It's raw and right in your fucking face. Next up, we got the track Godly Beings, which continues the fast and heaviness and aggressiveness. The opening to this sounds very thrashy, as it does give me some Slayer vibes. And then when the fucking vocals kick in, you just hear the classic death metal masterpiece that makes Obituary Obituary. This is a fucking killer track. Next up is the track Till Death, which continues the fucking great representation of old school death metal. This track makes me want to start headbanging and moshing. Yes, it's that fucking good. If any of you guys know Obituary, you know how good their old school shit is. Great vocals, drums, bass, and guitar work on this one. Now the track Slowly We Rot, that's always a tongue twister for me, which is notably one of Obituary's most popular tracks. This one also starts out with a slow and somber intro and picks up again with blast beats and riffs that make me want to hop in a fucking mosh pit and start pushing people. Incredible shit here. Next up is the track Immortal Visions, which progresses the thrash metal elements even more, to the point where we are just about getting a death metal vibe in a sense, with it all being pure old school death metal. Next up we got Gates to Hell, which is another sick track on this album, continuing the fastness and aggressiveness. This is an amazing track here also. Words of Evil is another killer track on the album, with more old school death metal, and this track is about exactly what it says. Words of Evil. Lies and manipulation trying to possibly be brought into your head is what the track seems to be about and tread on. Next up we got the track Suffocation, which seems to be about the devil wanting to bring someone into hell and will not stop until their life is complete misery or they sell their soul. Now the track Intoxicated seems to be about what it's like living in hell actually, and slowly finding out that your beliefs were wrong all along. Next up, the track Deadly Intention seems to be about having big regrets, or maybe even a fear of going to hell, or not being in the right on a certain situation, more lying and manipulation possibly even here on this one. This is another fucking amazing track. Next we got the track Blood Soaked, which is another incredible track on this album that continues the thought of what it feels like in hell, and or the devil's point of view as he burns us in hell. And last but not least, we have the track Stinkupus, which just continues the thought of dying and being sent to hell. That's one thing I will say is always unique about Obituary, is how they can come up with elements and ideas and push them further whilst the album progresses. And they did that without this fucking entire record here. So, to sum this album all up, the landmark debut album from death metal pioneers Obituary would stand apart from the crucial death metal releases in that year. This was a time when thrash metal, which was previously the more brutal side and the next big thing, it had plateaued into more darker, more sinister sounds began taking procedure. And it was all in extreme music. We were still a few years off from the second wave of black metal, storming from the Scandinavia to drive us all into the night. And the time was just right for something like this sick, savage sounds of this amazing Florida death metal band to have such sufficient impact. Comparatively, other debut albums from similar death metal bands such as Morbid Angel or Death around the same period of time focused on musical prowess or outright bludgeoning speed. Respectively, this was not the case with Obituary. Between John Tardy's vomitory vocals, Trevor Pearson and Alan West's grinding Hellhammer-inspired wall of guitar noise, and Brother Donald Tardy's fucking amazing double bass-fueled battery, the band presented itself as an almost Neanderthal level affront to what was taking place outside of them in the scene at the time. In some ways, they drew parallels to the Swedish death metal movement across the ocean that also focused more on mood than strict musicianship. But I digress. Slowly We Rot presents itself as a belt grinder to the face, kicking into double bass stomp and bellowed growl within the opening moments of the disc, never letting up throughout its entire duration. Which most interesting is that Obituary didn't seem to believe in conventional song structures or even lyrics at this point. They had just switched over from their mostly thrashed out employed on demo and compilation entries. See tracks contributed to the Raging Death compilation under their old name Executioner, going for the throat 2 to 3 and even 1.5 minute bursts that have a smattering of growls, riffs, and solos. Songs were short, linear, and seldom a repeated verse and chorus structure. And in a lot of ways, this also reminds me of grindcore. How like the lengths of the song, and like how it was just like one short burst and then boom, 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 you go to the next one. I also found that really unique about Obituary, how they always like had that vibe to them, you know? And it was cool. I will give them that. Progressing track to track, this album feels almost like an unfound body of work rather than a compilation of single songs. Much the same way their sophomore record also did, minus all the crossfaded atmospherics. Slowly We Rot wasn't even a single body of work, technically. As the first 7 tracks came from an 8-track demo, they shopped around to labels and impressed Mont Conner of Roadrunner Records so much that the label insisted on making it a part of their debut. Naturally, the band was pushed back into the studio to record a total of 5 more tracks to make it a full length. But those tracks were recorded on a 24-track deck, and despite the increased sophisticated of equipment, feel less direct than the first 7. Perhaps it is the jarring difference between the first portion and latter portion of the album that serves as the majority of the criticism, if any. That can be lobbied. This can be lobbied as the seminal release. As a whole, this album serves as an example of less is more, in much of the same way Left Hand Path by Entomb did, or Severed Survival by Autopsy had done. It was a style of this Floridian band. It was also a style that Death used, but they soon abandoned in 1990 as well. But Obituary would carry on at least until the mid 90s, and with this release, they would have an issue that Manifesto with 10-ton load of bricks unlike any other. Give it a listen, guys, if nothing else. It is incredibly unrelenting in its precise to be heavy. I gotta give this record a 7 out of 10, to be honest. As it could, I do agree, it definitely could be better, but I still believe it deserves its place in old school death metal classics. And guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Give it a thumbs up if you want to, and like, and even hit subscribe if you enjoyed and you liked what you saw. I do strive to provide value whenever you click on one of these videos, and help, maybe even help you learn more about this band, or any band or album, in fact. If you would like to see me review any more albums, leave them in the link, or leave them in the comments down below. You know, I am open to all genres of metal. I am. I would like, even if I don't like an album, I'll still review it and tell you my thoughts on it. That's just how I am. I want to be completely straight up and honest with you guys. If you would like to join me or Chaos's Discord server, the links will also be down in the description. Chaos actually just hit 300 members on his server, so big congrats to him on that. And anyways, guys, this has been Luke. Don't forget to take care and stay fucking metal. Cheers.